go. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the DNI Clean Supply webinar. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the DNI Cleaning Supply ZBioScience webinar. My name is Dennis Sambo. I'm the owner-manager, general manager of DNI Cleaning Supply, and beside me is Graeme Marsh, who's going to soon take over this webinar and take us down the ZBioScience road, and hopefully informative. I'm sure it will be. So enjoy it, and welcome to Graeme.
Thank you. All right. Well, it's a real pleasure to be up here in the northern parts of Canada instead of down in Southern California. I think that's, can you hear me clearly with that? Okay. So it's a real pleasure to be up here to talk about something that is more than just what we've been used to in cleaning in terms of being a combination of physics, which is the wiping, the sweeping, the vacuuming, and the chemistry. It's the way we've cleaned for thousands of years. And today, I'm hoping to provide us an alternative perspective, an added perspective onto where cleaning is going to go with advancements in technology that are going to address the issues that are ever so evident with the ongoing levels of resistance that we hear about from antibiotics resulting in superbugs such as MRSA, and how we're seeing also similar trends to resistance to cleaning chemistries that we've conventionally used. So I'm going to start with looking at the post-antibiotic era. At the moment, we've lived in a rather glorious era where we've actually been unaware of the impact of germs. Because if we get a strep throat, if we get an infection, what we've been able to do is go to the doctor, get an antibiotic, and we're back to work. It's minimal disruption. But 70, 80 years ago, a scratch on the knee would often lead to major infections and could lead to a loss of a limb. Strep throat was known to, in actual fact, lead to death. We've forgotten that that's the era that we live in. In those eras, that cleaning was the most important part of social and public health. We needed to clean as a preventative measure. But in the antibiotic era, we sort of let that ride. We forgot about it. And yes, we have been cleaning with a number of very important products. We've had major technological developments with vacuum cleaners, with all kinds of equipment. At the same time, we've had significant advances in some of the chemistries. We're into stronger bleaches. We're into 6th generation quaternary ammoniums. But really what's interesting is the question, why? So I want to go to a very basic fundamental. I want to ask the question, what is clean? Because today I think we're going to redefine what clean is, how we measure it, and how we achieve a scientifically, objectively measurable version of clean. So if I go to looking at where we've been in terms of a brief history of cleaning, it's always been wiping, sweeping, and we've used some form of chemistry. Back in the Babylonian and the Egyptian days, it was salt and ash, and then we added some vegetable minerals to it, but we were still applying those with some form of physical agitation. It was very good at removing soil. It was not necessarily good at addressing the presence of bacteria. So the conventional definition of clean tends to be no dust or dirt, no smudges or marks, no smells or odors, except maybe for the smell or odor of the clean material that we're using. Conventional measures of clean tend to be visual. No dust, no stains, no smudges. Again, the conventional measure of clean incorporates odor. We can smell the bleach or the disinfectant, and in recent years, the use of citrus in what we call green cleaners. Some people would use the white glove test. Others would think about using a black light. All of these measures of clean are based on subjective observation. They are not objective, scientific measurements. Now, in the post-antibiotic era, when we come down to trying to define what clean is, it really comes down to the concept of removing biofilm. And biofilm is something we can measure using a device or a methodology where we determine the levels of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Now, this is a method by which the US Department of Agriculture has been determining the safety of food production equipment in food processing plants on site and in the moment, with a view to reducing the risk of potential food poisoning contamination. I mean, we've all heard the enormous number of recalls that go on in food. We've seen chicken plants, we've seen ground beef, hamburgers, vegetables, all being recalled, at least in the United States. I don't know up here in Canada. I think you guys might do it a bit better. But what's interesting is that the emphasis is on how do we determine in the moment, cost effectively, on site, in a food production facility, whether the equipment is clean, hygienic enough for that process to be taking place in the food to leave. The US Department of Agriculture decided to use ATP. It's not a precise measure. It's not a measure of the culture. What it does is it is a means by which we can determine the probability of the risk of there being a pathogen biofilm. Now, that means, what is a biofilm? That leads us to that, the very basic question. A biofilm is a collection of microbial communities enclosed by a matrix of extracellular polymetric substance, known as EPS, think of it as like plastic, separated by a network of open water channels. These communities adhere to man-made and natural surfaces, from metals to your contact lenses to teeth. The plaque on our teeth is a biofilm. Now, in a lab, if I wanted to make a biofilm, I would just take a metal surface, or any clean surface, glass, metal, plastic, drip water, and the free-floating bacteria that are around us, known as planktonic bacteria, will start to settle and colonize on that surface. And they grow rapidly. They double every 20 minutes. And when they get to a certain size, they slough off and they start to recolonize in a place adjacent to the surface that they started. I don't know whether you can see this picture here. Amber, are we able to see this? What we have here is a picture of a biofilm. The little white dots are bacteria. The stringy, porous, elastic-looking material is the EPS, the biofilm, that extracellular cellular polysaccharide. So that is invisible. This is done under a electron microscope at about 1 million times. So it can be found on a wet surface and a dry surface. It's formed by pathogen bacteria that attach to the surface, and they start to basically colonize and they protect themselves. Think of it as once the bacteria have arrived and they've started to colonize, they create this like a saran wrap over the top of them to protect themselves. So when you're cleaning, what happens is you're not really getting to the bacteria. This is preventing the disinfectants and the cleaners from actually getting to the bacteria that created it. In America, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and the National Institutes of Health, after repeated research and studies, have determined that biofilm makes it 500 to 1,000 times more difficult for a disinfectant or a sanitizer to get to the cell wall. And that means it's not effective. So when you clean today, what is happening is you're killing with those disinfectants and sanitizers the bacteria that are actually at the top of this biofilm. It's not penetrating the biofilm. And the dead bacteria that you kill on the top become a protein food source that allow the bacteria that are protected by the biofilm to basically come up and feed off it and continue their reproduction process. So getting rid of biofilm is absolutely critical in the cleaning process. If you are seeking to have a truly hygienic surface. Now here are some examples of biofilm, just to help you on the way. I hope you can see this. The one here on the far right of the screen is contact lenses. This is the plaque on your teeth. Water distribution systems, your taps. This is an example of a biofilm from a poultry processing facility. And this is an example of biofilm that is found on waterways. So biofilm hides and shelters an awful lot of things. It, first of all, shelters bacteria, pathogen bacteria like MRSA, E. coli, Salmonella. It is also able to support a virus in the absence of a host. So viruses such as C. diff and Middle East respiratory syndrome, in agriculture, bird flu, the avian bird flu that wiped out 50 million birds not long ago when it had an outbreak, porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, they can all live in a biofilm in the absence of a host. So again, removing biofilm is critical to achieving a high level of effective hygienic clean. So looking at it here, the one comment that I found, a quote from the CDC, was that biofilm accumulation reduces the efficiency of disinfectants and sanitizers by impairing exposure of these products to the microbial cell. So given that, how do we know whether we have a biofilm? There's an old saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And as I mentioned, the US Department of Agriculture determined that ATP was the best, most cost-effective, expedient, on-site means of determining the risk of the presence of a dangerous biofilm. So the ATP, the adenosine triphosphate, is the universal unit of energy in all living cells, and it immediately determines if surfaces and waters are at risk of not being hygienic. Now, in addition to the USDA using ATP, the International Sanitary Supply Association also used ATP as the basis for its establishment of the K-12 clean school standards in the United States. And they set a range of cleaning levels using ATP as a measure, which was based on what the US Department of Agriculture uses for food processing plants. And we'll come to that in a minute, and I'll take you through. Blue chip companies also use ATP for measuring hygienic surfaces or the hygiene status of surfaces in everything from semiconductor plants, as well as food processing plants, medical equipment production. Now, I'm actually going to quickly show you here, and Dennis just brought this over. This is an ATP meter. This version, it's one of 3. This is the most commonly used. It's also the most cost effective. It's made by Hygiena. And what we do is, first of all, we turn it on, because that's going to be an important thing to do. It's going to be the means by which now I am going to test the surface. Hoping you can see it here on the camera. Let's have a look. Tell me now, Dennis, if I'm in the right spot.
See that? You know?
Yep.
A little bit closer.
We have it. All right. Hang on, let's calibrate it. We still have one in. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to be taking this swab. It's in a tube. It slides in there like that. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to test a surface here next to my computer on this podium. And I'm going to do a 2-inch square area. And then I'm going to put it back into this tube. I'm going to break the snap at the top here where there's a bit of fluid, a reagent, that will basically activate the level of ATP that has been accumulated from the surface here and get a reading. That reading, based on the table which I'm about to pull up, is going to tell us the probability of a pathogen biofilm. Okay, so the meter's now started up. I've now taken the swab out. I've found a surface. It's about 2 inches, and I'm rubbing this. I'm turning that cotton bud that's at the bottom of this over the surface, twisting it and turning it, making sure I'm really getting a good reading of it. I'm basically making sure I'm getting as much surface exposure to the cotton swab, which I've done here. I'm now going to put it back in. I'm going to break it. You might be able to hear this. Hopefully you can. And I've squeezed that reagent into the bottom. I'm mixing it around a little, making sure that it's fully got in touch with the cotton swab at the bottom. I put it into the meter. I close it. And now I hit OK. Now I've got to wait 15 seconds. And this is going to show me, give me a reading. Go down to 5, 4, almost coming up. It's like a countdown at Cape Canaveral. And I have a reading of 386. Can you really see that on the screen there, Dennis? Okay, so what does 386 mean? Well, on this screen, hoping you can see it, a level of greater than 300 on this ATP calibrated scale gives us an indication that there is a 99.9% probability of the presence of a pathogen biofilm. So that's not what you really want on a surface that you're cleaning. Now, to put that again in a little bit of better perspective, I'm going to bring it up to the ISSA K-12 Clean School Standard. 29 or below is highly effective. Remember, we got 388 on this meeting and reading just on the podium. If it read between 30 and 79, it would be highly effective. Or it wouldn't be effective, not highly effective. That's a sort of safe zone. 80 to 299 is an indication that you need some minor improvement. In other words, it's not bad. You can probably easily fix this. It's not going to be a problem. 300 to 599, it needs major improvement. In other words, you have a problem. 600 and above, the cleaning is totally ineffective. So, this is a really good measurement to give you an idea. 30 or below gives you a 2% probability of the presence of a pathogen biofilm. At a reading of 100, which is in that 30 to 79 area, it's effective. You've got a 50% probability, up to a 50% probability of there being a biofilm. Remember, that probability figure grows as it gets closer to 100 to get to that 50. And then when you get to 200, 99% by the time you're over 300. So this is a guide as to whether you've actually cleaned. This is not a white glove test. This is not a, oh, it looks bright and shiny. This is not a, it smells like it's been cleaned. I can smell the Clorox or the cloth. This is a scientific objective measure by which we can determine the safety of a surface based on how we've cleaned it. Now, the science of everything, of cleaning. The conventional approach is that we're going to kill everything. So when we hit it with a quat, a bleach, an oxidizer, and even an enzyme, and I want to be clear, this is really important. Enzymes are a chemistry. They are not a biology. People often refer to enzymes as being like as if they're living. They're not. They're a protein. They're a catalyst. They're applied with other materials with a view of helping accelerate the effectiveness and efficiency of those cleaners. But they are not a biological agent. So this is important. The objective of cleaning with all these, the clots, the bleaches, the oxidizers, the enzymes in conjunction with them, is to kill everything, the good and the bad. Well, we live with a need for good bacteria, and we try to do everything we can to reduce the presence of bad bacteria. That's how the natural life cycle works. If you kill everything, we're even more vulnerable. If you kill the good bacteria as well as the bad, we start to have a problem. We also create a completely artificial, unsustainable environment. Nature abhors a vacuum. And when you kill everything, you're creating a temporary vacuum. And what that does is it allows an environment for the pathogens to quickly recolonize. So if we go back to the biofilm, we're killing the bacteria, everything, the good and the bad bacteria that's sitting on the top of the biofilm. They're becoming a protein. That's the void. That's the vacuum. And it becomes the food source that allows the pathogens immediately underneath to quickly come up and feed and reproduce and expand and build an even stronger biofilm. So killing everything is not the answer. We think it is, and that's what every manufacturer of conventional chemistry cleaning products is going to tell you. But it's not what we really need to achieve. It's counterproductive over time. So we're coming down to chemistry versus biology. Now, Professor Nick Ashbolt, who's the professor of water, former head of the EPA's waterborne pathogen research, and I worked with him a lot on Legionella for 7 years. He moved to the University of Alberta about 2 years ago. Gave me a very interesting lesson on microbiology. He said, microbiology 101, Graeme, is that no matter how strong the chemistry is, the chemistries that we use to kill the bacteria, to kill everything, ultimately the bacteria will adapt. And that's what we're seeing with superbugs. Antibiotics killed everything. And we started to see the bacteria reproduce. We get to things like MRSA. And we're starting to see the evidence rolling through that conventional cleaning chemistries are creating the same level of resistance in the bacteria. They're fighting back. One research report demonstrated how the cellular wall in pathogen bacteria is starting to thicken, which makes it even more difficult for these chemistry-based solutions to work. So the conventional way of cleaning technically should be you clean, so use an all-purpose cleaner, something usually a high pH. You wipe everything down, remove the organics, and then you basically neutralize and rinse, and then you disinfect and sanitize. One of the first things I ever learned about cleaning was cleaners make lousy sanitizers and disinfectants. Disinfectants make lousy cleaners and sanitizers. But we're all commonly under pressure from cost and time and personnel. We are strapped for resources, so we often combine the two of them. So we put a cleaner and a disinfectant together, and unfortunately, we don't do the rinse to neutralize the surfaces. It's not working. So insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That was Einstein's approach. That was his philosophy. He also said something that was very important. He said, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that helped create it. So in the presence of superbugs, that we are seeing to antibiotics and growing evidence that it's also the use of our conventional cleaning chemistries is producing the same sort of levels of resistance, similar levels of resistance, it's time to rethink the equation. So we have a new scientific process. The idea here is to use microbes or bacteria, good bacteria, probiotic bacteria, to fight against the pathogens, the MRSAs, the E. coli, the Salmonella. How do we do that? Well, what's interesting is by introducing probiotics, what we're doing is we're using an ancient and well-established understanding of microbiology for competitive exclusion. What we're doing here is we are effectively overpopulating the surface with a large number of healthy, safe probiotic bacteria. And they are out-consuming the food source. And the pathogens basically starve to death. It's a bit like if you have a family gathering and you didn't think half of them were going to turn up and they all turn up and the cupboard's empty at the end of the night. They're out-consuming the food source. We cannot, the pathogens cannot compete with the presence of the probiotics when applied at the levels we have in our cleaners to get the food source. So they starve to death. No living being, no living entity in the universe has learned how to basically, has learned how to survive in the absence of food. So it's not a killing that results in some way of basically a mutation will beat it like it can with chemistry. It's a natural situation of creating an environment where, because there are so many healthy, safe probiotic bacteria on the surface, that surface is hostile, inhospitable to the presence of any pathogen bacteria. So we've actually added a third leg to the stool. We have our physics, our cleaning, sweeping, our wiping, our vacuuming. We've got our chemistry, which is the surfactants by which we deliver the probiotics to the surface. But we're adding a biology component. It's the third leg to the stool. So that's where the differentiation is in the product. Why it is the way why we've designed it. It's how it addresses the presence of biofilm. Well, I'll come to that in a sec, sorry. It's why it is different, and it's designed to address the presence of biofilm because probiotic bacteria effectively, when they're consuming the protein and are out-consuming the available food source, they are themselves actually producing an enzyme and a biosurfactant. They're excreting. It's part of their, they eat it in one end and they excrete the enzyme and this biosurfactant. The biosurfactant is compatible with the enzyme they excrete. And it works to break down that EPS, that biofilm. And in breaking it down, it turns it into a food source that allows then the probiotics to then consume it. And so we have this ongoing eating of the available food source, excreting a biosurfactant that's made internally by the probiotic that goes with its enzyme that it also produces, that breaks down the next layer of the biofilm, which then turns it into a protein to become the next layer of food source for the probiotics. And it does this until there is no more biofilm that can be turned into a protein source for the probiotics to continue to consume. And when there is no more food source available, the probiotics are self-regulating. Now, the probiotics in our cleaners are all approved for use as a dietary supplement for human consumption, for food packaging, and for food preservation by the US Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. So they're totally safe. There's nothing harmful or anything you need to be fearful about. It's a matter of utilizing nature's way of basically balancing the presence of pathogen bacteria to maintain the safest possible surface. So the scientific approach of adding probiotics, we don't attack the pathogen bacteria the way conventional chemistry does. We just basically take away what it needs to live, its food source. We don't attack the biofilm, we consume it, it dismantles. And the healthy probiotics are overwhelming the environment. And what that does, it leaves an ongoing presence until such time as they self-regulate and die. And their remaining presence is a form of a protective barrier. The probiotic bacteria are effectively the winners in an environment to which they're applied for all the resources necessary for them to survive. And the way to consider this is if the probiotics will lower the ATP, it means that the lowering the presence of biofilm by that process, reducing the risk of a pathogen biofilm being present and therefore creating a healthier surface. So it's a totally different approach. We're not killing everything. We're starving what we don't want of the resources it needs to exist and leaving a healthy, safe layer of protection that will prevent and make the surface hostile to potential recolonization by the pathogens that we don't want. I don't know, can you see this on the screen? Okay, this is a good visual. Before cleaning, and you've got a matrix here, we've got the dirt, the good bacteria, the bad bacteria, and the biofilm. Before cleaning, biofilm is encapsulating the dirt, good and the bad bacteria. The detergent or surfactant, basically the surface dirt is removed. It has little effect on the biofilm or the bacteria that generate. When you have detergent and enzymes, the surface dirt and bacteria are removed, and there's some effect on the biofilm and the encapsulated bacteria. The enzymes are not able to fully dismantle the biofilm. When we have detergent, enzymes, and probiotics, what we're left with is the surface dirt and the bacteria and the biofilm are removed, and the probiotics are what you have left remaining. And they prevent the pathogens from recolonizing on the surface because they're continuing to eat any available food source. So there's nothing there for the pathogens to basically come and take. Here's a better representation. Is this showing on the screen? So with a quat or chlorine dioxide or chlorine or an oxidizer, what we've got here is before cleaning, you've got the red dots representing the bad, and the green is the light, being the probiotics. After cleaning with the disinfectant, we're normally left with a smaller number of both pathogens and probiotics. But the pathogens tend to have the capacity to reproduce much faster. And so after an hour, you can start to see we've got more red dots. We've also got some more probiotics and good bacteria there. But after 8 hours, bang, the pathogens are completely recolonized. And after 24 hours, they are definitely the dominant biology on the surface. But with the ZBioScience biosurfactant cleaners or probiotic cleaners, what happens is it's the probiotics that are continuing to grow, and they make it inhospitable to the pathogens by basically making sure that they never get a chance to actually eat the food source. The probiotics are eating them faster. This is a table, and I'll expand this when you get a little bit. All right, Toxic Use Reduction Institute. This is an organization that does a lot of work for testing the effectiveness of cleaning agents. They're based out of the University of Massachusetts, Lowell campus, and they created a standard biofilm. In other words, one that was consistent. And they picked a number of products. I would have picked some more aggressive products, but this will give you a bit of an idea. Immediately after cleaning, the ATP levels of biofilm, the common biofilm that was treated with each of these products, it fell to below 30. And I'll be very blunt. Any cleaner that doesn't basically immediately lower ATP levels shouldn't even be on them. The question is, for how long? Look here after 4 hours. After 4 hours, the probiotic cleaner at 46 is still within the effective range of 30 to 79. However, the Clorox Works, the 409 All-Purpose, and the Crud Cutter disinfectant cleaner, they are all in the needs minor improvement, moving to be very ineffective. That's in 4 hours with no other activity. In other words, conventional cleaning chemistry offers no ongoing protection. It provides an instant, in-the-moment level of clean using ATP, but it does nothing to address the source of pathogens, and therefore it enables them to be able to start to recolonize. After 24 hours, the probiotic cleaner is still in the effective range of between 30 and 79. The other cleaners are all right up there, banging against the ineffective level of cleaning. In other words, if you think of it this way, coming back to the 4 hours, the surface that you clean tonight for people to turn up at their desk tomorrow is likely to be almost as unhygienic using ATP as the measure, the objective scientific measure. It's going to be almost as unhygienic as it was before you cleaned it by the time they turn up at their desk tomorrow. So, but with the probiotics, it's still in a highly effective clean. There's this ongoing level of protection that prevents that level rising. So I've got some field examples here. This is a little extreme. Does this show up on the screen? Okay, it's a bit mama. I want you to see this area here is, believe it or not, a white epoxy-coated concrete floor in the post-mortem room of a large animal veterinary clinic. What you see here in the white is the residue of foam of a probiotic cleaner that was applied. This grayness, this darkness on what is effectively a white epoxy surface had been subject to use of a quaternary ammonium disinfectant known as Victron, made by DuPont. It's used a lot in these different veterinary clinics. The protocol would be to rinse any of the animal bits left into the drain, foam the quaternary ammonium onto the surface, get a hard bristled broom and agitate, leave for 20 minutes, and then rinse into the drain. This veterinary clinic had done this at least once a week in this room for over 18 months. And it resulted in discoloration of the floor surface was slippery, the room was odorous. So their option was, let's just foam one of ZBioScience probiotic cleaners onto the floor and see what happens. Just left it overnight. No agitation, just foam and leave. Well, this was the first day that they did that. 4 days later, they did exactly the same. And I'm hoping you can see here on the screen that there are areas that are lighter. No agitation, just at the end of that day, they foamed, left overnight. This was the morning. The third application was done on day 8. And you can probably see here now, you could actually recognize this is a white epoxy floor. Still got a few marks on it, but again, foam, ZBioScience, C+ probiotic cleaner, and left it overnight. No agitation. After the fourth application on day 14, and you can see this here, you can actually see the lights reflecting off the ceiling, and it's not dark. At the same time, the floor was no longer slippery, there was no odor, and of course, the floor was restored pretty close to its original state. 2 weeks, 4 applications, restoration of the floor with no agitation after 18 months of once a week or twice a week with agitation use of a disinfectant, quaternary ammonium. What has happened is the probiotics have eaten away the biofilm. They've dismantled the biofilm on this floor and restored it. And the odor part is really important to know because it's pathogen bacteria that create odors. And by dismantling this biofilm and removing it, it got rid of the odors. And that can happen in homes and in sports rooms, school locker rooms, anywhere. Assisted living, we all know assisted living facilities have odor problems. The use of probiotic bacteria is excellent at basically eliminating odors. Now, this is a chart. I'll expand this a little bit further. These are some studies very quickly. At Camp Pendleton, the Navy SEALs base, Southern California, in the shower rooms for the men and women Marines, they have been using an ammonium chloride known as thallium. These are the ATP levels that they were getting after cleaning. They were cleaning the door handle in the men's shower room, the men's shower, the women's sink, and the women's shower. Now, as you can see, a lot of these ATP levels, 128, 63, 176, 209, 631, 299, these are unacceptable levels of clean after you clean. They switched on September, just on a year ago, they switched to the ZBioScience cleaning for the showers, the CS+. And you can start to see the after cleaning ATP levels are nearly all below 30, which gives you a highly effective level of clean. One of the feedback that we did here was that in doing this, there was also a reduction in athletes' foot in the soldiers. The men and women who were basically going out and training wearing heavy woolen socks and boots, and that was one of their biggest problems. Of course, we all know rocket rooms and that showers are a primary source. But the probiotics provided a level of measurable clean using ATP that was unattainable by the conventional cleaning chemistry. So here's one other example. I mean, this is the floor, this is a Whole Foods store in Glendale, California. It's a 9,000 square foot floor space store, and they have been using a well-known ecolab cleaner known as K Cleaner. What they were doing was they were measuring the ATP levels after the floor had been cleaned, the morning after the floor had been cleaned, before the store opened. So here with K Cleaner, the morning after the floor had been cleaned, using an auto scrubber and K Cleaner, it's just short of 200. At the end of the day, before they clean, the ATP level's back up to 700 plus. And you can go, well, that makes sense. There's not a lot of people, dirty shooters coming in off the street. Of course that would be high, and you're right. Then they clean, and the next morning, the ATP level before they opened the store was around about just short of 200. Not a great level of clean, as we've seen on that table. And of course, then again, the end of the day before they clean, it's back up between 600 and 700. At this point, they switched to the ZBioScience floor clean. They used exactly the same process. They put it in their auto scrubber. It was a substitute for the Retaliate K Cleaner, the Ecolab's K Cleaner. And the next morning, before they opened the store, you've got an ATP level that's barely measurable. At the end of the day, it's just over 100, well short of the levels of clean that you've seen in after when the store closed using the K Cleaner. Clean again, next day, very low levels of ATP using the probiotic cleaner afterwards. And what's more important, the dirtiest the floor got before cleaning in the evening, when the ZBioScience probiotic cleaners were being used, was cleaner than the cleanest they could ever get it with the K Cleaner. That's that ongoing level of protection. I'm hoping this comes out. Does this show it all? Okay. This is just an example again of the protective quality, which is one of the prime differentiators of these products. At the very bottom here is a concrete floor in a poultry processing facility where they were using one of the probiotic cleaners by ZBioScience, the C+. It was applied through using an auto scrub. What you have here are the yellow hazard strips for the steps going from the concrete floor up into the employee break room. These were never cleaned with the probiotic cleaner. Can't quite get the auto scrub to do the steps. So, this lighter moon present on the first step was not from any cleaning, but it was from the tracking of the probiotic left on the surface, using the probiotic cleaner on the main floor, being tracked up onto the step. And then slightly less like here on the second, and a little less on the third. I don't think it's coming out that well in this, but we can get you a copy of that. This is an example of how the probiotics continue to work as long as there is an available food source. This shows that they've got an ongoing level of protection that no other cleaner in the market can offer because they're all conventional chemistry. So I'll sort of wrap this up a little bit here. The question comes down to, we get asked, what bacteria, what pathogens is the product effective against? And the answer, without wanting to make it sound like snake oil, is all of them, because it's ubiquitous. If you take away the food source, it doesn't matter which of the pathogens are present. If they have no food, they starve to death. I'll give you a bit of an example here. This is from a large Northern Californian poultry hatchery. A poultry hatchery is, in effect, a salmonella factory. It's also well known for the presence of staph and coliforms. Down here is 118. This is the 18 months prior to using the ZBioScience probiotic cleaners. What's interesting is, as you can see, there are good levels of salmonella, there's staph, and there's coliforms. What's interesting here is that these were daily readings the hatchery took and would send off to a lab for culture testing, because they have to know exactly what's going on. They're a very different case. They used the ZBioScience and introduced it here, and immediately the salmonella and the staph were undetectable. The coliforms continued to remain, largely because the chicks are all defecating all the time. So there's some coliform present, but as you can see, it's very different. It didn't matter. We weren't targeting any of these specifically. We're just taking away their food source. So they were all affected the same way. This is a bit of an example. This was a case that was done by a lab. They wanted to see whether we were effective against listeria, which is a very bad actor, particularly because it can survive in cold climates. This petri dish here is effectively a known bacteria count of listeria applied to the petri dish. This dish over here was the same as this, but the previous day we applied 0.1 millimeter of one of our products. We call it in the ag sector our biomist. The commercial version of it is MS Plus. It's not a lot of product, but it decimated the colony, the petri dish of the listeria. Now, how am I going time-wise? Okay. Here's one that's a couple of, this one in particular. Poultry processing plants have been having an ongoing problem. They have a protocol of basically cleaning the equipment on the production lines using disinfectant cleaners. The protocols for most of these cleaners, including Victron, Techion, there's another one I can't quite remember, is that you foam the product onto the equipment, you are dressed in a hazmat suit, you go in, you scrub, you leave it there for 15-20 minutes, you then rinse it off, and then you take an ATP meter reading. Well, at a couple of processing plants, what you have here is the success and the fail rate of the ATP readings that they are required to take at specific parts of that processing line. What's happened is on that first cleaning, foaming, scrubbing, leaving, rinsing, they were getting between 20 and 40% failure rates. That meant they'd have to suit up, reapply, re-scrub, leave and rinse. So that takes a lot of time. That's about 40 minutes on that second round. Time that they don't have, time that the line will be down before they get ready to start it up again with a new shift. They switched to using the ZBioScience C+ and CO+ cleaners that had 0 ATP failures on the first clean. Now, the protocol still does require that they apply a disinfectant cleaner. This is what they do. 5 minutes before the line starts up, they have a guy with a backpack sprayer and a mask, and he just goes around and sprays on the line. That meets the protocol. It'll probably kill the probiotics that are providing ongoing protection. But the point about it is they're adding the disinfectant cleaner to the cleanest surface that they've had. And they're not having to re-clean after the first day. It's saving them 35, 40 minutes on 40 to 20% of those spots. Sometimes it means because of where those failures occur, the whole line has to be redone. So one of the things that's important is to remember is that bacteria are the main source of odors, the pathogen bacteria are. If we use the product, probiotic cleaners, we're in a position to basically go ahead and eliminate or dramatically reduce odors more efficiently. Remember, I've had janitors and custodians come up and say to me, well, the smell, I know it's clean, it smells clean, it smells like Clorox. Well, that's wrong. The real scent or the real smell of clean is nothing. So we're very good at eliminating odors because we're starving the pathogens that create the odors to death. And we're also very good because we're breaking down, dismantling that biofilm, like you saw in that veterinary clinic floor, was reducing the risk and fall factors. So effectively, there's a professor at University of Oregon, and her name is, I'm trying to look at it here, I thought I had it. She's done 3 TED Talks. Jessica Green, that's it, Professor Jessica Green, University of Oregon. And she gave one of the talks on TED, where she talks about, let's look at, are we creating the right microbiome in the building? Are we creating the right ecosystem inside a building? And she goes through and explains, you know, after it's been cleaned and they do all these tests, and they find that in a ventilated building, there is a much lower diversity in the ecosystem than there is on the people coming in to out of the building and outside the building. That lower diversity in the ecosystem inside a ventilated building is reflected in a much higher concentration of pathogen bacteria than is either on the humans coming in and out or outside the building. So effectively, what we've got inside a ventilated building, like the one we're in now, because of the way we're cleaning it, we have a more dangerous bacterial ecosystem. And she finished her talk going, we all know that we're as healthy as our gut. Unfortunately, mine's a little too big. But that's why we take probiotics. It's standard practice. We see them advertised on TV. Doctors are recommending them. Because it's there to put a better balance into our gut, into our digestive system to improve our health. One of the ways is yogurt. We hear people say, eat yogurt, it's really good for you. It's good bacteria. So she finishes this talk by going, if good bacteria, putting it into your gut is going to make you healthier, like yogurt, I'm looking for the yogurt for a building. And that's exactly what the ZBioScience range of probiotic cleaners are. We are establishing a healthier, safer, cleaner, more hygienic ecosystem in the facilities that you clean with us than you are with the conventional chemistry cleaners that you are currently using. We are able to address the presence of pathogen bacteria. We're able to reduce the impact of the biofilm and dismantle it and get down to a level of microscopic clean that no other conventional cleaners can do. So I'll leave you with that thought. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I get a little worked up about this because I get very excited. I think that this is one of the most important innovations in cleaning and in public health. Cleaning is, in a post-antibiotic era, the front line of defense in public health. And using probiotic cleaners is going to get you to the best level of clean that you can achieve for the public health in public facilities. So thank you very much.